Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for SACAC's Mini Camp College. My name is Faith Fox, and I'm an admissions counselor at Randolph-Macon College and helping plan these mini camp colleges for you all. Some of you have tuned in every week when we've been hosting these webinars, and for some of you, this is your first time joining us. So thank you all so much for being here for tonight's topic on how to apply to college and write an effective essay. We have some great presenters for you all tonight that'll be sharing tips and tricks, and I'd love to go ahead and introduce them. So Abe, we will start with you.
All right. Good evening, everybody. My name is Abe Desi. I am the Associate Director of Admissions at UNC Charlotte. Thank you for being here with us tonight.
Great. Olivia, we'll go to you next.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you all so much for signing up and joining us tonight. We're really excited to talk to you. My name is Olivia Ireland, and I am an Assistant Director of Admission at Denison University, which is a small liberal arts college located in Granville, Ohio, close to the state capital of Columbus.
And April.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. Thank you all for joining us. My name is April Nicolai, and I'm a regional admissions counselor for East Carolina University, which is located in Greenville, North Carolina.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So those are all of our panelists. We'll get started in just a second. I want to remind everyone that we're so happy that you're here. Unfortunately, your camera and microphone is disabled, but we still want to interact with you. So please, if you have any questions throughout the presentation, just click on that Q&A button at the bottom of your screen and submit questions, and we'll be sure to get to them at the end and answer all of your questions. But with that being said, Olivia, you guys can take it away.
Perfect. Can everyone see my screen? I'm hoping.
Yes.
Awesome. I think we're all set to start. So we'll get to the start of the presentation.
All right. Wonderful. So as you can all see that today we're going to talk about how to help you kind of navigate through the application process, and then we'll also share with you some tips about as far as writing your college essay. So as far as preparing your college application goes, we're sure that this is an advice that you've received over and over again, but it is something that is very true and would be very beneficial for you, and that is to start early and to set deadlines for yourself. Part of the reason why we encourage you to start early is to really make this process as seamless as possible for you and for it to be as stress-free as possible. So there is a little bit of work that you're gonna have to do as you're essentially gathering the materials that you need and actually putting forth the effort that is necessary to do the application. But again, if you start early, you do a little bit of piece of it kind of on a weekly basis, on a daily basis, it is not going to feel as troublesome as if you kind of wait towards the last minute to get the things that you need. Along with that, kind of with giving yourself extra time, one of the things you have to keep in mind is that your senior year is also going to pick up. So the classes that you're taking, the assignments that you have, they're going to be a little bit lighter at the beginning of the start of the school year. So you want to be mindful. So you want to look at the syllabus for all your coursework. You want to look at the deadlines for all of your application and really just kind of front load as much of the work as you can up front. So for those of you that have taken the time to do some of the work over the summer, fantastic. But of course, if you have not, again, now is really the time to get rolling. The other advice we want to share with you is utilizing university admission website. There are a lot of wonderful websites that are out there that'll help to aggregate the information that you need. And they are incredibly useful. So we don't want to minimize it. But the thing that we want to stress for you is once you've kind of narrowed down the list of schools that you are planning to apply to, so whether that be 3, 5, or however many or more that you're going to apply to, once you've kind of boiled it down to that phase, you really want to focus on gathering the information that you need specifically from the university's admissions websites. Especially with this year, just given with COVID-19, there's still going to be a lot of fluid things and a lot of things that are going to change. So the university admissions website is not static. They are always updating it, especially when it comes to events and different ways in which you can engage with them. But then really when it comes to deadlines and all the materials that you're going to be required to submit as well. The other thing we want that you hope you do as you're kind of reaching this phase and when you're kind of at the stage of applying is really understanding the university admission requirements. And within that, there's probably kind of these three terms or these three words that you'll regularly hear. So a reach school, a target school, or a safety school. And typically what that means is as you're looking at kind of the numerical requirements that are presented on the admissions website. So whether it be the middle 50% or the average in terms of GPA and test score, one of the ways that you can kind of quickly decipher where you fall is going to be by looking at the averages that they have presented for you or the middle 50% and then kind of comparing that against your own individual GPA and test scores. So reach schools typically are what we refer to that may be slightly outside of their range. So, so in those cases, you just want to be mindful that it is okay that you can have test scores and GPAs below what they are presenting on the website. But it does mean that that's a reach school for you, which means that other parts of your application, you just have to be stronger in those areas. So you've got to put a little bit more time when you're putting together your essay, letters of recommendation, and all the other pieces. Target school is basically one where you fall right in that range of what they're advertising. And then the safety school is that you actually exceed the averages in the middle 50% that are presented for you. The other thing we would encourage you to do is to identify all the items that are required in order for you to complete an application. The reason why we stress this is different universities are going to require different things. One of the ways that you're going to know what is required of you is to start the application so you can actually see the kinds of information that you have to put in, but to also look on the admissions website to see, do you have to provide an official transcript? Or can you just list your grades of the courses that you've taken? Do you need an official test score or are you able to self-report test scores? And those kinds of things you won't really know until you actually get to that phase. So the earlier you know, again, it just makes you less stressed and able to navigate the process a lot better. And then the last thing is really differentiating between the information that you have and the information that you need to go collect. So for example, your biographical information, so your name, your birth date, all that information you should know yourself. When it comes to your transcript, that's not something that you can provide yourself. When it comes to the letter of recommendation, you can ask someone to write a letter for you, but you can't provide that letter on your own behalf. So knowing what you need to ask of someone or what kind of has to go through an automated process really gives you the ability to get started with those as early as possible. So the one thing that we really would stress is to help yourself stay organized. And here is just kind of a screenshot that we've put together of some of the important information when it comes to the items that are required to complete your application. And then if you look at the first one that's listed there, it's really the information that you need as you're comparing the different schools. So you'll realize as you are searching through the number of universities, it's never going to be an apples to apples comparison. So the best way that you can get it as close to as possible is by kind of lining up those informations that you find out about the different universities and to keep yourself really engaged in the process and to not feel overwhelmed. I think from a professional stance, we always say use a spreadsheet. You can also do a worksheet as well. But if you do a Google search and just kind of type college comparison spreadsheet, you'll be able to find a wide variety of templates. And what I always tell students that I work with is if you're seeing an information in a row and you don't think it applies, go ahead and delete it. So there's nothing that says you can customize this as much as you want it and lay it out in the way that it makes the most sense to you. But then again, you just need something to help you stay organized. So with this, we just kind of wanted to share with you some terminology that you are probably seeing on the website or you may have seen admissions officers share. So you really want to make sure you understand these, especially as it kind of drives when you choose to apply and what that action basically means. So the first one is going to be early decision. So with early decision, you will notice that the application deadline is typically going to be earlier. So it is one of the earlier application deadlines that you'll see for that given university. If admitted as an early decision student, you need to understand that the decision is binding. So what that typically means is that the expectation from that university, if they admit you as an early decision applicant, is that you are actually communicating with the other universities for which you may have already submitted applications to, and you're basically withdrawing yourself from those processes. So usually if you are applying early decision, we would encourage or at least get you to understand that this has to be your first choice school because you are essentially committing before you have additional information about merit scholarships or financial aid or any other pieces. The next one is early action. So with early action, you get the benefit of applying early, so that's always a plus. You get your decision back earlier, so you get to hear back usually kind of before the close of this year. So or it might be just in early January. But then the advantage that you have is you have until May 1st to let that university know whether or not you choose to attend. So it gives you the ability to hopefully in the spring go visit if that is something that will be allowed at that point. But it also gives you the ability to see your financial aid award, to participate in all the admitted student day events. So you apply early, you get your decision early, and then you kind of put yourself in the driver's seat and you have all this time to make the decision. Regular decision for most universities is typically the second application deadline, which most universities have a first and a second. With regular decision, it means that the application is due a little bit later. So you've got more time to gather all your materials and submit it to the university. But it does also mean that you won't hear back until a little bit later in the process. So for most universities, that can go until March or possibly kind of beginning of April when you hear back. Rolling admission, what that means is that you submit your application once it's open. The sooner you complete your application, the university will give you a decision within a reasonable time. So some universities may be on a 2-week rolling admission, so meaning your application is complete August 1st. You'll hear back by August 15th. And again, you have until that May 1st deadline to let the university know whether or not you choose to enroll. The thing to keep in mind about rolling admission is that as a university admits more and more students, it means that there is less space. Therefore, the admission criteria typically tends to creep up in terms of what the university is looking at to kind of fill the remaining spots. So if you are looking at universities that provide a rolling admission, you really have all the advantage by applying as early as possible. The other is priority deadline. So with priority deadline, and you really want to read the language that the university uses very carefully because it's typically not a hard deadline. But what it's basically saying is that students that apply by that priority deadline are essentially going to be reviewed first for admission. So if you see a priority deadline of January 1st, everyone who gets their application in by January 1st is going to be reviewed kind of as part of that first group or priority group. And then everyone who submits it after that date is going to be part of that secondary group. But again, read a little bit closer because for some universities, even though the priority deadline is January 1st, it doesn't mean the individual that applies November 1st and December 1st are going to be treated the same. So you really want to differentiate what that means. And then lastly, we want to share with you, because especially for this year, test optional and test blind are terminologies that you are going to see a lot more often. With test optional, it basically means that it is not a required part of the application, so you don't have to have a test score to complete the application. However, if you do provide it, the university will look at it and take that into consideration when making a decision. As for test blind, in most cases, they won't even allow you to submit the test score. And even if you are able to submit it, they won't look at it at all when making a decision. So again, with those, when it comes to priority deadline, test optional, test blind, you really want to engage with that university and the counselors at that institution to see how they are defining it for themselves. So to kind of really drive that point of us encouraging you to apply early, again, some of the benefits that we will emphasize is that it's going to be less stress. Senior year, you're probably taking the hardest courses that you have taken up to this point, which means you're going to have a little bit more workload. And obviously for a lot of you this year, you may still be continuing with the remote learning. So there's still kind of that adjustment that comes with it. So really as much of the college application process you can really do on the front end, it will just make your senior year a lot more enjoyable. It also can improve your odds for being admitted. So especially for universities that have kind of a first round and a second round, for students that apply in the first round, you can receive a decision that's usually referred to as being deferred. What that means is that the university is moving your application from the first application cycle to the second application cycle, and they are giving you the opportunity to provide additional information to essentially, A, show your demonstrated interest in the university, but to also hopefully provide updated transcripts that show hopefully improved grades in your senior year, or it's an opportunity for you to provide an additional letter of recommendation, or they may ask you to write a statement. So again, you'll get that opportunity if you apply in the first round, but if you apply in the second round, they can only give you a final decision because you don't really have any more time on the back end. So it can help improve your odds by applying early. The other piece is access to merit scholarships. So a lot of the times, most merit scholarships are going to be due in as early as November or December. So again, applying to the university is part of the requirement of being eligible for a merit scholarship. Sometimes the university application actually covers the merit scholarship. Other times, even when you have to do a secondary application, the requirement is that you also need to have the university application as well. So it gives you access to that. And we would say be proactive in this process. The advantage of being proactive is that you don't miss a deadline. There is nothing worse than having been a strong candidate for a scholarship or having been a strong candidate for a university, but you kind of jeopardized that chance or that opportunity just because you missed a deadline. So really, really take that very seriously. And then the other piece you have to keep in mind is, even though you are submitting everything electronically, electronic submission doesn't necessarily mean immediate. So you submit a transcript electronically, it comes in, you submit your application electronically, it comes in, but those two pieces of documents have to be linked in the software that the university uses. And sometimes hiccups happen because your transcript may be coming with your official legal name. You may have applied to the university with your nickname, so those two things may not necessarily match up. So again, the advantage of applying early, checking on that portal that the university provides you to see if your application is complete, really gives you the advantage to make sure that everything is in on time. And we would say set everything a 2-week deadline. So if something is due on August 15th, you need to pretend as if it is due on August 1st. So if something is due on December 15th, you need to pretend as if it's due on December 1st and try to meet those deadlines. And then kind of as far as my piece, the last thing I wanted to share with you is really the different options when it comes to application fee waivers. The thing you need to keep in mind with application fee waivers, most of them is on need based. So it is not a matter of you saying, I don't want to pay for this application, therefore I'm going to have access to a fee waiver. It is most of the time based on need. So the College Board, which is the organization that basically administers the SAT. So if you are a student who had received a fee waiver for, say, to take the SAT or the ACT, that typically comes with a set number of application fee waivers that you're able to use to different universities. In the past, that used to be a paper process. Now there's a code that you can submit, but again, it doesn't mean the universities all take the code. So if you have essentially received a fee waiver for those, you should contact your school counselor or college advisor as soon as possible if you don't have access to the fee waiver yourself. The next one is through NACAC. NACAC is the National Association for College Admission Counseling. So it is one of our professional organizations, and they also provide a fee waiver as well. Now that fee waiver is a form that has to be filled out by your school counselor. So again, if say your family's financial situation has changed from year to year, or if there's some kind of hardship that may have just occurred around the time that you're doing the application, your college advisor can assess that and fill that form out for you. And then in the cases where the forms are not available, some schools will accept an email from a school counselor basically saying that the student and their family is experiencing financial hardship, and essentially the counselor can inquire on your behalf how to go about getting a fee waiver. You also have the ability to reach out to the university or college. And again, different universities, some will provide fee waivers, others will not. But again, you need to approach it with the mindset that you're not just saying, can I get a fee waiver because I don't want to pay? Again, most of this is to support students who may have the financial need. And then CFNC Application Week, this is specific to individuals in North Carolina. There are a group of universities that will participate during that week, and they will waive the application fee for individuals that apply during that week. So you want to essentially visit the CFNC website to see which universities those are. So if you are applying to that university, and by waiting till then, you won't miss the first deadline or the deadline you're wanting to meet, that could also be a great way to get your application fee waived as well.
All right, thanks, Abe, for sharing all those helpful tips. So now we want to talk about how to actually apply. Which applications can you use? So the first one I'm going to talk about is the university-specific application. And so what that means is some universities have an application that is on their website that you apply, and you're only applying to that school. So for example, ECU has a Navigator account, UNC Charlotte has their Future 49 application, and those are available on each of our websites. Common App is another place that you can apply for schools. It's a platform that allows you to apply to multiple colleges or universities using some of the same common information. Please be mindful that not all of the colleges utilize Common App, so I'd recommend that you search colleges using their Find a College tool on their website before you start an application. They also have a step-by-step process about how you actually go ahead and apply on Common App, so I'd recommend that you look at that before you go ahead and apply, so that helps you through all those steps like creating a profile, how you add schools, how you add information, and then how you submit the application. College Foundation of North Carolina, or CFNC, is another place that you can apply for schools. It's going to be schools in North Carolina that is listed on that one. And then Coalition for College is similar to Common App. It allows you to apply to multiple schools at a time. Each application is different. However, you can expect to include biographical information such as your name, date of birth, address, academic information such as the school you attended. Some additional items may be your residency certification number for those that are North Carolina public institutions, campus safety information, alumni affiliation, military affiliation, and extracurricular activities. Some schools also may have admissions portals that are separate from the application, which tracks your application status and the required items. So be on the lookout for those, especially if you apply on CFNC, Coalition for College, or Common App. Then kind of transitioning into some of the supplemental items that you need for your application. Most schools require an official high school transcript. And so the official high school transcript should list all the courses that you've completed in high school. as well as the courses that you plan to complete your senior year. It's okay that you don't have grades yet. We'll just want to see what courses that you plan to take during your senior year. To be accepted in a North Carolina public institution, you are required to complete specific core requirements to be accepted. Your high school counselor should have been working with you all throughout high school, so just make sure that you've completed those necessary requirements. And if you're applying to out-of-state schools, just make sure that you meet any of their requirements in terms of courses. The official high school transcript does need to be sent directly from your high school. So you can check the admissions website for each school that you're applying to see how they would like the transcripts to be sent. Some like an electronic transcript service, some prefer mail. So just be on the lookout for that. Some institutions may also require that you submit a college transcript if you're duly enrolled in a high school and a community college. So again, checking those websites, I think we can kind of reiterate that through the whole presentation, making sure that you're keeping up to date about what is required. Another requirement could be test scores. This would be your ACT or SAT. As Abe mentioned, test optional. A lot of schools are going test optional this year. But also be aware that there may be other things that require a test score at the school, such as honors college, academic programs, as well as merit-based scholarships. So be on the lookout for those if you still need to submit a test score. Some schools will also super score, which means that if you take the SAT, for example, multiple times, they'll give you your best composite score for admission. So that's really an advantage for you as a student. Also, some schools may not participate in something called score choice. So no matter if you've taken it multiple times, they won't necessarily super score. They just want to see how you've done overall. Another thing that could be included as part of the application is your essay. And this could be in the application as you're filling it out or submitted separately. So again, check that website to make sure which way. Letters of recommendation are also an important part of your application. Some schools require them, some don't. Some encourage you to still send them in, even if they're not required, because they do help, especially during that holistic review process this year. Because a lot of schools are going test optional, letters of recommendation is a great extra piece to include in your application for review. And those can come from a counselor, a principal, or a teacher, someone that really knows you academically and can also speak to your character as well. Some schools may require a resume or a portfolio to kind of see what extracurricular activities you've been involved in, community service. The portfolio could be if you're interested in an art program and need to submit some pieces of work for them to review as well. Some schools also will looking at something called demonstrated interest. So this could be in the form of an interview, this could be in the form of a campus tour, reaching out, a personal statement, in addition to a letter of recommendation. So just showing that you're very interested in the school. I definitely encourage you to reach out to admissions office, connect with your admissions counselor. The more that they know you, the more they'll be, the more when they review you, they'll know you more as a student and how you'll be successful in their university. Also be on the lookout for additional applications for academic programs. So just because you've applied to the university doesn't necessarily mean that you've applied to your specific academic program that you're looking at. Some schools you can definitely come in undecided, but if you know what your major is, engineering could be an example, there may be a supplemental application to fill out so that you get accepted into that academic program.
Perfect. Thanks so much, April. So now that we've really covered, you know, how to prepare for the application process and how to access the application process, we wanted to take a bit of time to talk about the essay. And this is my personal favorite part and favorite piece to talk about with students, kind of for two reasons. One, I read and review about 1,000 applications each year. And as you can probably imagine, a lot of the numbers, a lot of the transcripts, a lot of the things that we're seeing on the application can start to look a little bit repetitive. But the essay is one place where I can really get a sense of the student's personality. The other reason I love to talk about the essay is because when I was going through the college application process, I remember being really, really stressed about the essay. And so I love having this conversation with students because I want you to see the essay as an opportunity in a way that you're really sharing something about yourself. So whether that's a story or something that you're passionate about or just a little bit of your personality, I really hope that you can see it as something that's just going to add to your application and not something to get stressed about and lose sleep over during your senior year. So what we're looking for when we are reading these essays, we're looking for an essay about you. I've read amazing, well-written essays about someone's mother or grandmother or friend, and those are great essays, and I can get a sense of how they are as a writer. However, nothing is added based on that essay. I don't learn anything about the student who actually wants to come to Denison. And so that's the first thing that I'm looking for, is just getting some additional information about you. And then the other thing that I'm looking for is your ability to write. So we really want you to be successful on campus. If you come to our colleges, we want you to be successful, particularly in your first year. And we want to make sure that your writing level is on par with what's going to be expected in those first classes. Then once you're on campus, we're going to provide academic support, and we're going to make sure that you're able to succeed in year 2, 3, 4, etc. But we really want to see that essay as an example of how you'll be successful in year 1 at college. So going into kind of just the process of writing an effective essay. So the first kind of thing that I would highlight is just prepare to put some time into the essay writing process. You know, we don't want you to sit down and think you're going to write your essay in one night. Even if that has been successful for a class in the past, we're asking you to take a bit more time and think a little bit more about this essay so you can be the most successful in your college application process. So a piece of advice coming from the three of us would just be to brainstorm a number of ideas. So, you know, if the topic is asking you one question, think about a few different things and a few different ways that you might possibly want to answer that question with. Then I would definitely highlight to pick only one of those topics. I do think that there's often a tendency to then you're brainstorming 4, 5, 6 different things you can talk about, and then you write your essay and you try to incorporate all of those. I would say brainstorm, but then select one. That way you can really get your theme across, you can really get your story across to us in a cohesive way. Consider the word count constraints. You know, there's different types of essays throughout the application process. I know the common application essay, for example, has a word count, but then, you know, a supplemental question for a specific university might have a very, very different word count. So you'll want to take the time to actually check. The worst thing we would want for you is to have to, you know, it's a 250 character limit and you've just spent time writing a 2,000 word essay. So we don't want you to be putting too much, you know, excessive time in that way. We want it to be all productive. So make sure to look at those before you get started. We'd recommend that you complete a number of first drafts. So maybe those are drafts about, you know, there's one topic that you've selected and you're going to write a few different drafts about that. Or maybe you even want to brainstorm and write a few drafts about all those topics that you've brainstormed, or 1 of 2 topics that you've brainstormed, and really elaborate on those. And then read them over and get a sense, okay, this is the way I want to answer this question. I feel like this is really highlighting who I am as a person. It's a great answer to the question based on my own personality. After you get a few things written and you've completed those drafts, you'll want to edit the essay by yourself. And I would definitely recommend taking a good amount of time to do this. You know, if you've written those all in one day, maybe go sleep, go have, you know, enjoy your day, and then look back at it the next day and see if it's still the same message that you want to be putting forward in your college application. After you've revised it by yourself, I would say that one of the most valuable pieces is to have someone else read your essay too. So you can absolutely ask a friend, you can absolutely ask a parent, a guardian. etc. But one of my biggest pieces of advice to students is ask someone who doesn't know you as well. I think sometimes students will have their best friend and their mom read their essay, and there ends up, when I actually receive it on my desk and I'm looking over it, there's some inside jokes and things that I don't fully understand. Don't know you before you're applying. So I would definitely suggest having other people look over it that don't know you as well, who's going to be coming in from the standpoint more of where I would be, and just kind of considering it in that context. Once you have gotten their feedback back, I would definitely emphasize again, just to make sure that you're making the changes and you're making the edits based on those, the feedback and the revisions that you've received. We still want to make sure that it's your voice that's coming through that message. We still want to make sure that it's really you that's being highlighted throughout this essay, that it's your writing. So make sure to ask, but then take the time yourself to actually edit it through based on what you've heard. So just a few tips about the essay kind of writing process. One thing I always like to emphasize is that the entire application that you're completing is a writing sample. So again, I think we put so much attention on that essay, and sometimes then it's, you'll put all your focus there and then you'll not actually read over the list of extracurriculars that you've included to make sure that the correct grammar that you've used in your essay is reflected there too. So make sure to edit those pieces in terms of the language and grammar too. A big thing that I often feel is that I get to know someone throughout the process. They've emailed with me, we've done a virtual interview, and I've gotten to know a little bit about them. And then I read their essay and I don't feel like it's something that I've heard from them. And I feel like it's something that they thought I would want to read about, but it's not showcasing what they truly are passionate about. So make sure to just think about that. There's not a certain topic that us as admission officers are wanting to hear. All we want to hear is what you're passionate about, what you're wanting to bring to campus, something that you've done in high school that you're proud of. That's the message that we want to hear. So just consider that. Again, this is an opportunity for us to learn something new about you, or, if there was a class that you loved, yes, we'll see on your transcripts that you took that class, but maybe this is your time to elaborate on why you loved that class or a project you did in that class. So again, it's just an opportunity to add a bit more, add a story about something that we might have already been seeing, but we wouldn't get that level of detail. The one thing another thing I really like to highlight is the fact that an essay will be used to enhance or diminish your application. It can add a little bit, it could subtract a little bit from your application. However, turning in a great essay is never going to directly lead to an admission decision. So as you're going through this process, I hope that helps just kind of cut a little bit of the stress. And the last piece would be that most essays that we read don't have the wow factor. I remember when I was going through the process, I was trying so hard to wow every college that I was applying to. However, the majority of the essays that we read are well-written, good essays, solid essays. So it doesn't need to make me leave laughing or crying. It just needs to be an essay about something that you really care about. So that brings us to the end of our presentation. We intentionally left some time for questions so we can get those answered for you. So there's a Q&A feature at the bottom of the Zoom screen. And then I know Faith is going to come back to moderate that session.
Yes, thank you guys so much. All that information was super helpful. So students or attendees, if you guys have any questions, please feel free to submit them now and we will be sure to answer all your questions. But it doesn't look like we have any submitted yet, so we will just wait and see. Okay, we got our first question. Olivia, do you want to go ahead and stop screen share so I can pull all of you up full screen so we can answer all these?
Yes, sorry about that.
Oh, no problem. Okay, perfect. Question we have is, what are some cliche essay topics?
The torn ACL is my go-to answer. I feel like I read so many from athletes that had some sort of injury, which we understand can be really, really hard when athletics is a big piece of who you are and a big piece of your high school experience. But it's definitely one that I feel like we see a lot of.
Anyone else have examples they want to share?
I don't have a cliche one, but I guess it's kind of a tip for the students. One of the things that you really need to keep in mind is kind of following the prompt. So I think that is one of really, I think Olivia kind of hit it really well, where she said, you can't incorporate so many things into one essay. So really sticking to the heart of the prompt, I think a lot of times will get you really right at the target that you're shooting for.
Awesome. Okay. Next question is, can the same essay be submitted to multiple schools?
I'm happy to answer. So yeah, for example, if you're applying through like the common application and the coalition application, those are the two that I'm the most familiar with, just because Denison University, where I work, that's what we use. Those essays are like one essay that you write, and then it's submitted to every single school that you've added to your common application or coalition application list. That being said, even for some of the common application and coalition application schools, they might then ask for supplemental essays where they're going to be more specific to their campus community, or they're more specific to what they're looking for in their candidates. I would just highlight to be careful when you are using the same essay at a number of different colleges, particularly if you're looking at a number of schools that are somewhat similar, they're a similar size, maybe they're in a similar location. You know, there might be essay topics and essays that you can use from school to school, but make sure to go back and edit them and make sure that you've used the right school name. That is definitely something that we've seen, that they've obviously submitted the exact same essay to somewhere else to the point that they've included that name. So that's a point where revisions are just really important, is to make sure to go back and make sure that you're using the right school name and incorporating some information that might be more specific to that school, even if it's just a little bit of additional details.
Thanks, Olivia. Next question. How can I become closer with my admissions officer? April, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, for sure. So a lot of admissions websites will have the admissions counselors listed on the page with their contact information. And now we are living in more of a virtual age. A lot of people are doing virtual appointments with admissions counselors. So I'd really just say, check out those admissions websites for each of those schools and reach out to the admissions counselors for your area. We are really friendly. We do want to help you. So I know it's super scary to reach out to colleges and to admissions counselors and ask questions, but honestly, we welcome it so much, and we really appreciate when you reach out to us so that we can help clear up anything that you're unsure about, or just to talk about the university and how you would be a good fit at the university. And so I think we, all of us would agree that you can definitely reach out to us at any time and start making that connection. Now, if there's anyone joining that isn't a senior on this, you know, it's okay to start a little bit early and reach out and show that demonstrated interest early.
Speaking of demonstrated interest, next question, how important is demonstrated interest in the college application? How can we demonstrate interest for a college?
I'm happy to jump in for this one. So really one of the ways that you can demonstrate your interest is by showing that you've done your homework. So you've done a little bit of research about the university that you're applying to. For those of you that will apply through the Common App, you'll see one of the common questions that a good number of universities will utilize is why insert university name. So in that case, if you can kind of take a step forward and say, if you know what you want to study and you say, I'm interested in studying this, I've had the chance to look up the faculty members, and some of the research that they do is interesting, meaning that you've actually done that. Or, you've had a chance to kind of look around campus and you can say, I can really see myself being, in this building, kind of studying or doing my assignment, or really just you've taken the time to really do those research about the university that you're able to share 2-3 facts kind of as part of your essay. So from a university perspective, what we're really looking forward to is that you've done your homework. You're selecting an institution because you see it as being a good fit for you. It's something that's going to help you move closer to your goals. So just share why and how it will do that for you. And a lot of the times those are, for me, kind of the best essays when it comes to really being able to demonstrate your interest in the university.
Great, thank you. Next question, does each school offer a list of topics to choose from, or does the student typically choose the topic?
I can take this one. So it just really depends on the school. I know, speaking for ECU, we have a list of prompts. One of them is a little bit more open-ended, gives you a little bit of flexibility. So I think some schools have multiple, some might have a specific topic. So just kind of checking on the application or on the website if they have it listed.
Great, and we got 2 questions about the SAT. So if you only had a chance to take one standardized test, should you disclose it for test optional schools? And then also, what happens if you don't have a strong SAT score?
In terms of if you decide to disclose it or not, so my university's been test optional for 12 years. So I can truly say that we have no preference on if you submit an SAT score or not. We look back every few years to see how the students who have gone test optional are doing on campus. And we've seen that they graduate at the same rate. They're doing just as well in their classes. So it really is a test optional policy. What I would recommend is if you feel like you put the work in to prepare for the SAT or the ACT and you feel like it's a good reflection of who you are as a student and you feel like you're proud of that score, then I would definitely recommend submitting it. That being said, if you feel like your transcript and how you've done in your classes is a better reflection, don't be scared just to submit that and to choose to go test optional. The other resource that is definitely helpful is go on to the individual universities' websites and you can see a range of where students who are typically admitted are, where their scores fall. So I always say if you're in that range, it's not going to harm you. It's great to then submit the score. If you're far below the range, that might be a time where you should consider test optional admission. And then if you're above that range, a great time to submit your score. And then if you don't have a strong SAT score, I can at least say, being a small liberal arts college, we have a really holistic approach. And I think many schools have a similar holistic review process. So if your SAT score isn't as strong, we're just going to hope to see that you have strong extracurriculars or, how you're spending your time or your essay or something else about your application that stands out. No one has a perfect application. There's always, weaknesses. And if the SAT score is your weakness, that's totally okay. We're going to try to find the strengths in your application. And there's typically an additional information section where you're able to provide additional details. If it is something that's making you really nervous and you're applying to a school that requires an SAT score, that might be a good opportunity to just add a little bit of details to explain maybe why you didn't do as well on the SAT and what you would rather have the admission officer focus on.
Great, thank you, Olivia. The last question that I have, unless anyone wants to submit another one, is how can we access the recordings for this webinar, which is a great question. In case you didn't know, all of these webinars are being recorded and put on SACAC's website, which is the organization that is hosting the college mini camps. And we can, in the future emails that we send out with the last webinar that we have planned, we'll send out information with the link to access that. But if you go on SACX website, find the Mini Camp College tab, you'll see all the recordings. So definitely go on there and look at those. But that was our last question. So maybe we'll wait just a couple more seconds to see if we have any other ones.
And Faith, for our attendees, it will go out in the email, but I've also just shared the link in the chat. So if folks want to be able to access it, they can definitely access the prior videos, and this one will get loaded shortly.
Thank you, Abe. All right, well, I think that will bring us to the end of our webinar on how to apply to college and write an effective essay. Thank you so much, Olivia, April, and Abe, and Laura behind the scenes for all your help. And thank you to all the attendees for coming out. We really appreciate it. Had a great night. So everyone have a great rest of your night. Bye.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Thank you.